Welcome, everybody, to the Healing Place podcast. I am your host, Teri Wellbrock, and I am so grateful that you're here. Before we dive into today's conversation, I want to share some beautiful news. The Healing Place podcast has been ranked number 11 in the top 15 healing podcasts for 2026 by PodRanker. And to be included alongside the likes of Oprah and Dr. Tara Brach is something I truly receive with humility and gratitude. This recognition belongs to the entire community, to every guest who has shared vulnerability, and to every listener who shows up ready to grow, reflect, and heal. Whether you're walking through grief, trauma recovery, addiction healing, personal growth, or spiritual expansion, this is your space. A space for compassion, a space for courage, a space for healing. And I am so glad that you're here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for inviting others. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for commenting, loving, liking, leaving your reviews, joining me on my Facebook page of the Healing Place podcast, connecting on LinkedIn, wherever it is we connect. Again, I am so grateful for you, and this wouldn't have happened without you. So thank you. All right, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome, everybody, to the Healing Place podcast. I'm your host, Teri Wellbrock, and super thrilled to have with me today Tiger Bai, and we have met recently. We're both on Hilton Head Island through the Nirvana Network, which, if you're on the podcast page for Facebook, you've seen me post some stuff about that, which I'll continue to do. But Tiger Bai is an international yoga professional, Oxygen Advantage Master Instructor, and holds an MS in Health and the Public Interest from Georgetown University. And we're going to talk about all kinds of fun stuff. So welcome, Tiger.
Thank you so much for having me, Teri. What a special opportunity, and looking forward to digging into it all.
Oh, me too. Me too. I get so excited. I know my intros pretty much sound the same so many times, but I have these wonderful, beautiful conversations before I hit record with folks. And then I'm like I'm already beaming with anticipation and joy. Somebody told me recently, you're like a little kid. You clap your hands and you get so excited. I'm like, I am like a little kid. I do get truly excited about these beautiful conversations. And like I told you, the amazing work you're doing in the world. And one of the things I want to talk about, so you say international yoga professional, and I think you and I had talked very briefly when we were at a meeting together. This isn't just a local thing, that you have clients all over the world, right?
Yeah. Thanks to the internet. After the pandemic, I kept going with the online yoga and online breath training simply because it opened up my services to people who I would have never otherwise come in contact with. So I'm regularly teaching people all across Europe, all the way to Australia, and it's a blessing to get to see so many faces every week that, you know, 10 years ago maybe wouldn't have been possible.
I know. I love that as well. I mean, what a gift it is for people to be able to connect anywhere in the world. When I look at my top 10 countries, sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, Turkey. Like there's people in Turkey tuning into the show and listening to you. Like they're going to be tuning in and hearing our conversation. I just think that's so amazing. So now how do you do regular classes? Do people sign up to do like they would if they were coming to a studio?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the co-founder of an online yoga studio called betteryoga.net, and we teach weekly, or rather daily live stream classes in yoga and breathwork. And we have a library of over 400 on-demand classes that people can download, stream anytime. So we do the public live streams, and we have our video library, and then I work with people one-to-one via Zoom and that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's fun. I love those. What do they call that? Oh, there's a word for it. Like evergreen, where you can, yeah, you have that
Yeah.
library that you can go and be like, oh, this is what I need today. One of the things that I know I had seen when you had sent me some topics, and I wish I could talk, we had time to talk on all of them, but um, why going to yoga class may not actually be helping you. And I want to tell you a story really quick, and then I would love for us to dive in just a little bit on that, because I know for me, as a trauma survivor with horrific childhood trauma, being in my body was a really scary place to be. And so breath work, when I first started EMDR therapy, which for those who are listening is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, um, my therapist has recommended, oh, do some 4 square breaths, do some breath work. And breathing brought attention to the fact that I was in my body, and I was always trying to dissociate. I didn't want to be in this scary place. Um,
Mhm.
and so I remember being in a yoga class, and after it was over, lying on my back, and all of a sudden, overwhelming anxiety came over me, and I had to literally crawl to a corner and just kind of like ball up because I felt like so overwhelmed by all that was arising. And so, um, but on a positive note, once I started to do a lot of the healing work, wow, did I find yoga and breath work such a gift. I utilize breath work daily. I mean, it's just such a gift in my life. So what what did when I read that, why do you say, going to yoga class may not actually be helping you?
I'm so glad we're talking about this. So, yoga, breath work, just like any other thing that involves your unique physiology, is not one size fits all, right? So, a lot of times, the way yoga teachers are taught to teach, so at a yoga teacher training, we learn very specific sequences, we learn specific poses, we learn ways to cue things. And so many teachers will approach a class with a plan in mind and a run of show, yet the people who show up in the room are of all different walks of life. So you might have somebody who's super flexy, bendy yoga Barbie who's going to stand on their head and do the splits. Great, more power to you. You might also have somebody who's working with trauma, trying to find modalities that might feel self-soothing. And those two people oftentimes don't need the same kind of yoga. And so it's a real shame that people will try yoga for the first time and think, oh, I went to yoga, I didn't like it, as if that one class encompasses the entirety of an ancient multimodal practice. So, first and foremost, know that yoga is for everybody and everybody. The trick is finding the yoga that's right for you. Now, an experienced teacher who has their eyes on their students can adapt to who's in the room, right? So they might have come in mind with a very fiery flow or something, and they see that most of the people in the room are actually, you know, not so mobile, maybe slightly older. Okay, I need to adapt. I need to make sure that these people walk out of this class feeling nourished, right? Feeling balanced. So
Yes.
that's one part of it. And then specifically when we're thinking about the breathing, which is just another layer that can cause things to go awry. Everybody is breathing. Most people are not breathing optimally. Over 90% of professional athletes don't have a properly functioning diaphragm, which means they're what's called a dysfunctional breather. And that's from a study out of Japan in 2023. So if people at the highest level of sport have dysfunction in their breathing, what might that say for the everyday population, which in our day and age is quite sedentary? Sitting is the new smoking. I've heard it before. Both are bad for the lungs, both are bad for the breathing muscles. So people come into a yoga class with potentially maladapted breathing. That could be hyperventilation, which simply means breathing in excess of the body's requirements. They could come into the class with maladapted breathing muscles. So not properly recruiting the diaphragm, maybe from all that sitting, maybe from a physical trauma, various reasons why that could be true. And then the psychological layer, of course, is going to impact the breathing. The breath is the bridge between the body and the mind. What you're thinking and how that gets translated into the body is going to be showing up in the breath and vice versa. So now you have a yoga teacher whose intent is beneficial, whose intent is benevolent, leading a flow and guiding you to breathe very specifically. Breathe in to reach up, breathe out to fold forward, breathe in plank pose, breathe out dog pose, breathe in up dog, right? Breathe in, step your right foot forward at a cadence that could be making people feel more anxious because they are breathing in a different pattern that is either too slow or too fast for them, which can end up leading to anxiety. So oftentimes people are used to breathing faster, and the yoga is actually cued slower. And when we are breathing slower than is comfortable, that air hunger forms. Air hunger is the same feeling as suffocation. You can get it by trying to breathe too slow as you might trying to hold your breath underwater. And so now you're asking people to do challenging movements with a breath pattern superimposed that might be completely too advanced for their body. And then you ask them to lay it all bare in Shavasana, every part of their body exposed. And you ask the question, why is this making me feel anxious? For the past hour, you've been trying to fit a mold. That's just simply not where you're at. And so I say going to yoga might not be beneficial. It's not that the yoga is not beneficial. The class you're going to might be doing more harm than good.
Yeah. Wow. So much brilliant wisdom in one answer. Wow. Like for real. Well, since the moment I've met you, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I could learn so much from this person. You're just so, I just love your mind and the way you communicate. And, but seriously, like so much that you spoke, I was like, been there, done that, been there, done that. Like I remember almost feeling like I had to like gasp in, like I was feeling that like I wasn't breathing right, or even I felt like the guilt, like I'm not doing it right.
Yeah.
I'm not breathing right. Because why am I short of breath? Like why do I feel like I'm having to suck air in? Yeah, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And so, like I said, yoga teachers have a benevolent intention. And this is not me in any way hating on yoga teachers, but what I will say as um, uh, for yogic education in general in the United States, that foundational 200-hour training is not giving people a whole lot of education on the science behind how yogic breathing or breathing in general works. And so it can just lead to a lot of confusion, miscuing, and just a general lack of awareness and um, lack of a toolkit. The most important thing for a yoga teacher, for a breathing instructor, for a Pilates instructor, whatever modality you're teaching, is to learn to see your students. If you're spending the entire class demonstrating without looking at how people are responding to your cueing, there's going to be some misalignment and maybe dysfunction in the room. And so even when I'm teaching on Zoom, obviously these, 20 people aren't here with me in my home studio, but I'm watching them half the time and instructing with my voice because my goal isn't just to teach a yoga class or a breathing class. My goal is to teach them something about yoga or something about breathing so that they can take that into their practice without me. I always joke with my private clients, which is not a good business model, but I always say goodbye is the goal. Like when you're fostering a dog, my mentor, she fosters dogs and often fails all the time, but goodbye is the goal. And so I say that to my clients, like, I don't want to be teaching you how to breathe for more than 6 months. If you haven't learned from me in this time to breathe well on your own, you're either not doing it or I'm not teaching it properly. So, you know, p part of my style of teaching is really that educational aspect because everybody's a breather. You might as well learn to do it well. It's a skill you'll need your entire life.
Yes, yes, so true. Wow. Something had popped into my head as you were talking that popped back out, but it'll come back when it's meant to
It'll
come
come back.
back. So yeah. I just I I love, oh, and that's what it was. It came back. I've been in both types of yoga classes. I've been to multiple classes, multiple different teachers, and the ones I walk away from going, wow, that was amazing, were the ones where the instructor comes around and either helps me adjust something a little bit or just says gently, great job, or it's just whatever it may be, like if it's a word of encouragement or just some little guidance and help, because then I feel seen and I feel like, oh, okay, they know that this is what I need support with, or this is, I don't understand this or this. And so I truly, that's what it is all about, is me walking away going, okay, I learned a little something there. It wasn't just following, like you said, like a cookie cutter routine.
And what you just said is so true. I think for a lot of people is that people want to be seen. People don't want to be judged.
Right.
And oftentimes the two can feel conflated to be out in public, to be out in a space, to be moving your body in frankly weird shapes, right? It's vulnerable. And so how do you, as a teacher, is my question, how do I make people feel seen and noticed and appreciated, but in no way feel judged as if what they're doing is wrong? And that's a big thing I try to distinguish is, I'm here to teach you an archetype of a pose. Poses are like making anything else in your kitchen. There's a recipe that if you follow it, it will turn out better. And so if somebody's recipe is off, if they're, you know, not hinging from the hips properly, if the back is rounding when it ought to be a more neutral spine or whatever the scenario is, it's not because your body is wrong or bad. Even if you have an injury, even if there's something that is overtly dysfunctional, nothing about your body is wrong or bad. I'm inviting you to try on a recipe to see how it turns out. And eventually, you do it enough, you make your own recipe, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember, oh my gosh, like one time my leg was just like shaking because I was not used to holding my leg up in a certain position for so long. And I love that this particular instructor was wonderful and started talking about, well, my leg is shaking so bad, like, it's blah, 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 blah. I was working in the garden yesterday and so my legs are feeling wobbly. And again, it was the humor and the making me feel like, oh, okay, I'm not the only one. And here it was the instructor saying it. And so I don't know if she saw my leg going crazy, and just kind of brought it in. But it was just such a wonderful moment to be like, okay, so this isn't abnormal or wrong. Yeah. Yeah.
The beautiful thing about the body and about the breath is that they are adaptable and they can change and they can improve. Just like most things, it's a matter of your time and attention and your compassion.
Yeah. I am curious, going back to the breath for just a second. I know for me, something I had heard or read, or I forget, maybe it was a podcast guest, I don't know. Somebody had said that our exhale should be longer than our inhale, and that's part of like a healthy breathing. Is that something you agree with? Or like when you talk about, oh, athletes, so many major athletes aren't even breathing right. Do you have a specific way that you recommend that people breathe?
Yeah, absolutely. And so let me just take a step back and just explain a little bit about the breath cycle on a sort of the top contour basis. You have really four parts of any breath cycle. Inhale, the peak, the exhale, and the base of the breath. The inhale, and I'm going to speak just at rest. So you are not running a marathon right now. You're not at the gym. You are at rest. The inhale is the more active part of the breath because this is when the diaphragm, your principal muscle of respiration, is contracting. And the diaphragm is an enormous muscle. One of my favorite authors, Leslie Kaminoff, says the diaphragm basically runs from nipple to navel. That's how long this muscle is in the torso, right?
Wow.
Yeah, and it also is a 360-degree muscle going all the way around the rib cage. So it's quite large. And so when you inhale, the diaphragm contracts. It's like the shape of a parachute or a jellyfish, and its edges move wide and its dome comes down and in a little bit. And so if you're listening to this and not driving, you could take your hands to your lowest ribs, like framing your ribs. And as you take a breath in, you can feel that widening sensation, right? That's a good indicator of a diaphragmatic contraction, of a diaphragmatic breath. So you have the inhale being the active part of the breath. And if you think about if you're in your kitchen and you're putting the dishes away from the dishwasher and one slips out of your hand and it's almost like it's going to fall to the floor, what does your breath do?
Yeah.
Exactly, right? And so an inspiration, an inhale can be the sympathetic or the kind of fight or flight response,
Yeah.
right? Okay. And then we have the top of the breath. Some breathing practices, you mentioned box breathing earlier, will have you retain the breath at the top. That has various physiological effects, details which we can get into on another episode. It's sort of a big topic. And then you have the exhale, which is really the passive part of the breath. The diaphragm comes back to its pre-contracted position. And your abdominals are doing a little work because your abs are the muscles of expiration. So if you were to really exhale all your breath out, you can feel your belly knitting in. And then you have the base of the breath. And a natural breath usually has about a 2-second pause at the base of the breath, kind of just enough time to say thank you in your mind. And there is such a thing as what's called a functional breath. And the way I have people remember this is that a functional breath is like LSD. So you're never going to forget it because a functional breath is light, slow, and deep. And there are those 3 dimensions of a functional breath. So the light breath is really targeting your breathing biochemistry. How much gas are you exchanging? How much air are you taking in? How much CO2 are you breathing out? Slow, that's going to target the sort of psychophysiological component of the breath. How does the speed of your breath influence the state of your mind? When you're anxious, scared, or stressed, tend to breathe faster, right? Tend to hyperventilate versus when you're calm, relaxed, the breath is a bit slower. And then deep, which is really referring to an anatomical direction in the body. So a deep breath is not necessarily this big, noisy belly breath. And that's a really important point because a lot of times you'll tell somebody, go ahead and just take a deep breath. And then they'll go, which is actually quite an upregulating breathing pattern. So a functional breath is light, slow, and deep. So that naturally means the breath is through the nose. The mouth has 0 anatomical functions beneficial to breathing. The nose has over 30. So close your mouth, breathe through your nose. Try to breathe slowly. And there's actually been studies done it. They've done a comparison of a breathing pattern of in for 5 and out for 5, and a breathing pattern of in for 4 and out for 6, extending that exhale. There's not a whole lot of difference.
Okay.
So in those kind of minimal ranges, just slow your breath down in general. It's going to do the trick. And then deep in it. And, a lot of people might have their breath kind of caught up in their chest, their shoulders are moving vertically. Bringing those hands down to the lower ribs on the sides of the body. It's a good way to feel for that depth of breath. So a belly breath is not the same thing as a diaphragmatic breath. The belly doesn't breathe. You can move your belly independent of your breath. You cannot move your ribs and intercostals independent of your breathing. So light, slow, deep through the nose, slow your roll, feel the sides of your ribs. And there is benefit in slowing down the exhale, for sure. What you want to pay attention to is that you're finding the right cadence for you. So if you go to a breathwork class or a yoga class and they tell you, okay, breathe in for 3 and out for 6, and you're like pushing out that exhale just to finish to that arbitrary time, like it's not that helpful. So extending the exhale can be quite calming. In fact, that is the parasympathetic side of the breath. When you get home after a long day, what do? Right? But you want to make sure that it's the right cadence, because if you are breathing out too long, one, you might be over recruiting accessory breathing muscles, which ends up tightening the body. And two, you might get that feeling of air hunger, because as you're breathing out slowly, there's still carbon dioxide rising in the blood, which is giving you that sensation of air hunger. So if you didn't hear anything I just said in the past 4 minutes, LSD, do it.
Yes, did you see me? It is funny, like as you're talking, I'm like, I could almost feel my breath. I felt my shoulders drop. I felt my breath slow because I was following and listening and trying to implement some of the things you were talking about. And it is so true. I particularly liked what you said about the cadence and paying attention to our own needs, our own bodies. I've tried doing that. We're okay, in for 4, out for 8, and you're right. I'm like, like trying to get the last of that, and I'm like, no, that's not working for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And important thing to note, for those female-bodied people out there, if you are somebody who menstruates and you have a typical menstrual cycle, your breathing is going to be different during all 4 phases of the menstrual cycle. So during the luteal phase, before the bleed, before the period, this is a time when estrogen is dropping, progesterone is rising, and progesterone is what's kind of known as a breath stimulant. And so, people have made plenty of money advertising things that can help you with your PMS. And it's like, we're not really making it up. If you are more stimulated to breathe, which means you're more agitated and breathing quicker, your fuse is shorter, your brain's working faster, you're more likely to be anxious, you're more likely to be stressed, you're more likely to be just over it. And so the breath can play a big role in that female monthly cycle. So, before the period, on the period, when that progesterone is higher, that's a really good time to practice that slower breathing, because naturally our breath wants to be a bit faster during that time of the month.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you. I know that was another one of the things I had started to talk about. So, and this kind of leads to my next question of breath training versus breath work. Is that what you're touching upon here, or is that different?
So we're having a breath renaissance, I think, in the West. Obviously, so many of these practices have been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. They are not by no means new, but the West is really having its breathwork moment. And it's a highly unregulated industry. The yoga world has some regulation. There's Yoga Alliance kind of monitoring registered teachers and that kind of thing. When it comes to breath work, it's really like the Wild West at the moment. And so there's a lot of vernacular for these practices: breath work, breath training, breathing, somatic breathe, like all these different words. And I think it's important to make a distinction between what is breath work and what is breath training. Because in this just like we were talking about, somebody goes to a yoga class that their unique physiology might be unprepared for. You may well go to a breathing class or do a class on YouTube that your breath isn't quite ready for. So pranayama, breath work, these structured breathing techniques that usually have a specific energetic goal in mind. I want to be energized. I want to calm down, right? These techniques are in service of a goal to feel a certain way. Um, they are, you're essentially putting a technique over your natural breathing pattern. And if your natural breathing pattern is hyperventilatory, shallow, or heavy, and then you're going to put a technique on top of that, you're never really learning to breathe properly at rest. Which it's great that you're going to your 20-minute breathing class, but what about the other 23 hours and 40 minutes of the day, including when you're sleeping and not paying attention? So I think it is really crucial to do breath training before you get into bigger breath work techniques. So breath training is learning how to breathe functionally at rest and even during sport, during exercise. So at rest, we want to have that LSD breath, that light, slow, deep breath through the nose. And once you have that as a baseline, well, first of all, your life will improve because you're not as reactionary, you're less tired, you're more even keeled in your nervous system. So the day-to-day benefits are amazing. And then when you decide, okay, I'm gonna go to a Wim Hof class, or I'm gonna go to a Kundalini Pranayama class, you are starting from a baseline of functionality and understanding of who you are as a breather. And then you add these techniques, which can oftentimes be quite upregulating. And from that baseline of function, you can really observe the effects versus somebody who unknowingly hyperventilates all day long and then goes to do these big techniques and wonder why they leave the room feeling like they just drank 18 cups of coffee and cannot get a hold of themselves.
Right.
That's me being dramatic, but I think we both know people who have tried breath work and they're like, that was not for me. That made me feel crazy. That was way too much. So breath training first, light, slow, deep. Get your carbon dioxide tolerance at a good baseline. Get your breathing biomechanics, your breathing muscles strong and pliant. Learn to breathe through your nose, and then go to pranayama class and see just how amazing the benefits can be.
Yeah, well, I mean, that makes so much sense. Yes, because then you can say, okay, this is my normal. And
Yeah,
now let's see what these changes do, like how it impacts me. Brilliant. Yeah,
and
again.
learn to walk before you can run, you know?
Yeah,
The
yeah,
same thing with your
exactly.
breathing.
Yes. Well, I could sit here and listen to you for, days because I just love your wisdom. Before we close out, is there any words of wisdom you want to leave people with or anything you wanted to touch upon that we didn't have a chance to?
Oh man, I think I would just say to anybody listening, when in doubt, just breathe through your nose. The nose is for breathing, the mouth is for eating, and the more you breathe through your nose, the more functional your breath will be.
Okay, wonderful. So how do folks work with you? How do they find you and connect?
Sure, you can find me on my website, tigerby.com. You can practice yoga with me on betteryoga.net, and you can follow me on Instagram at tigerinspire. I'm always posting fun little breathing and yoga videos there.
Oh, that's awesome. Awesome. Wonderful. All right. Sammy never normally comes over, but I think she wanted to say hi to you. So, Sam, are you saying hello? Uh,
She sees my wiener dog in the corner.
oh,
Now her through the screen.
hi, baby. All right. Well, it's just been such a joy. I look forward to seeing you at meetings and in person, but it's just been wonderful to have you here on the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Terry. Always great to talk about breathing. So
Yes, yeah, it's been
thank
great.
you.
I've learned so much. All right, well, everyone, thanks for joining us today on the Healing Place podcast. And remember, until next time, be gentle with yourself. Thanks. Bye-bye. Hey, everybody, Teri Wellbrock here. Just wanted to thank you again for being a part of this healing space and my hashtag Hope for Healing journey. Thank you for sharing, liking, inviting others to join, listening in. You've really helped this show blossom. It has now been downloaded in 136 countries and is in the top 2% globally out of 3.2 million shows, which is just amazing. And it's all because of you and your tuning in and inviting others and sharing and liking and loving. And your reviews on Apple really help too. My goal is to hit 100 5-star reviews by the end of the year. And I am closing in on that. So if you are listening in on Apple or Apple Podcasts, please go and rate the show and leave a review if you absolutely love it. And I would be most appreciative. Also, if you would like to receive my monthly Hope for Healing newsletter, please be sure to go to teriwellbrock.com. It's Teri, just one R, WELLBROCK.com. And I have a gift to send you for signing up for that monthly Hope for Healing newsletter. Plus, there are many other resources listed on that page, including a resource library. All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.